Every time we've taken another step in exposing our game to a global audience, they wanted more. And we went from preseason games to regular season games. Now they want more regular season games.
Pretty soon after concluding the first game, we were back on the bike getting ready for the second game.
On Monday after the game, the planes took off, and right away there were teams lined up, and we were already starting the process that we would go forward with another game.
We went from something that was just a very much seen as an event to being something that became part of the annual sporting landscape in London.
After the initial game, we were treated to some of the biggest stars in the NFL. To see greatness on the field in London was incredible.
In any first year event you do in any venue, you learn huge amounts about how to work together, and that was the thing that drove, I think, that 08 sort of year. Is we've made some learnings now and we can really make this a special event and improve it year on year.
There was a lot we learned, there was a lot we changed, and there was a lot more I think we did better as a group, and that's with Wembley too, so they learned a lot. It certainly wasn't turnkey, and it never is, so with every game we learn, because teams are always going to be different, they're always going to prepare differently, and you're always going to have a different scenario.
I mean, it's just been a crazy week, this entire time. Obviously, everything surrounding the game, flying overseas was just a surreal moment, just being able to walk off the field with victory.
My job, in a nutshell, is to provide everybody that's involved with the team with everything that they require to do the best job that they can do. Average now is 179 people come with an NFL team. Of those, 53 people can actually impact on the field, but the rest of them have all got equally important roles that lead up to putting those guys on the field. And our job is to make sure that those guys are ready, but at the same time we want to make sure that they appreciate that there is absolutely no reason for them to not perform at the highest level. And consequently, our job is to make sure we take away all of those excuses and make sure that they execute what they're trained to do.
Having been a player of the London Monarchs, where I was a typical player, I suppose you could say, where I'd rock up, get off the bus, I'd have my headphones on, and I'd walk in the locker room, my shirt, Anderson was there, my bag with all my cleats, my pants, my pads, everything was set out for me. And then as I evolved into working in the front office, I went from one of the guys who just walked in and it was there to making sure I was a guy that made sure it was there.
One of the big things we do for a home team is we take that burden away from them. So we take that razzmatazz, we take the show, and we build it, and we let them focus on football. So we manage the cheerleaders, we manage the mascot, we do all their travel, we'll do the rehearsals, we set up all the operations and stuff for them so that they don't have to worry about it.
One of the major things that we struggle with is finding a hotel that has enough meeting rooms. Each coach needs a working office as well as a meeting room. And then you have to accommodate secretaries, admin staff. You've got the press guys, the media guys that come over to work. So it's a whole new level. So there's very few hotels that are not only able to deliver the meeting room space, the bedrooms, and also the service. The quality of the service is important because we want to encourage these teams to keep coming back, and they're the ones that are going to promote the game to the other teams. And it's about what a great experience it was.
I think looking in that 08, 09 period, developing the field so that it could withstand the NFL's kind of usage. I've learned a lot about grass in my first 3 or 4 years of doing this job, of the different types, and what works well in the UK environment. Without going through 07, 08, we would have never got to where we are now, which is a really strong playing surface that can withstand multiple sports.
It's really a beautiful stadium, and I know how much I enjoyed it the last time I played here. But at the same time, we realize our main goal is to win a football game, because it's certainly be a much longer flight home if we don't take care of business.
Whilst every team has different characteristics and different needs, it made every game very, very different. Some teams want to be much more involved, some teams can be much more demanding, others can be much more kind of placid.
I can tell you within an hour of the team landing whether or not they're all facing in the same direction. Some clubs you just know that they all have a common goal and they're all focused on achieving one thing, a W. The other teams are a little bit more awkward in terms of their focus. So you're constantly understanding the psychology of individuals and of groups. And so we are part-time psychologists as well as enablers. So you're looking to make sure that people have everything that they require.
One of the strangest things that happened though was that when I was working with the New York Jets, for some reason they shipped over loads of toilet roll. And when I was speaking to AD, the operations assistant at the time, I said to him, why? He said, well, they have a guy on their staff who's done a lot of traveling throughout Europe. And he said the toilet paper is always kind of rough. I goes, okay, where did he stay? Hostels. I said, yeah, that's a hostel. You're staying in 4 or 5-star properties. It's totally different. But they had their own idiosyncrasies, like they'll ship over their own condiments because their ketchup is different to our ketchup. Again, we go back to how do we make these teams feel at ease, because they want everything to be exactly as it is in the States.
We used to get a lot of folks coming over from New York to help us stage when it was just 1 or 2 games a year. But now that the games are such a big part of the calendar and we're playing 4 games, the folks in New York have their own season to worry about. So it's meant that we've had to bring on more expertise full-time in the UK office. So we have people now working year-round on getting our games played and staged. But the people in the office is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, if you look at the number of people that actually work on game day, it is kind of quite a mind-boggling operation to get the games on. No one's ever looked at, okay, how can we cut the corner? How can we get away with this? It's always been, how can we do these games properly, make them a great experience for the fans, make them a great experience for the teams. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence out there within the NFL community to say how well the games are staged and what a great job the folks over here do, and that yes, you're going to be well looked after and the game's going to run well, and you can just concentrate on what you have to do, which is winning the game.
We bring American football to London. Let's give them a show.
I used to manage the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, and we did a block party, and I kept talking about this block party concept where you just close down the street and you have vendors and it's a concert and it becomes this big party. And we started looking around, and then we ended up stumbling upon the Regent Street Association, and I think that was one of the greatest things we've done, is to close down Regent Street, to get that shot of all the NFL flags up there, and to really make that special, and to really do something like that in a city that's so big and so crazy. It was just something that I didn't think we could do, and we did it.
When people ask me about the London Games, the first thing I kind of think about is the fan events and Trafalgar Square and taking over Regent Street, and it's been sensational. And again, for me, coming from that position of being a fan of the NFL since the mid-80s, seeing the kind of lows of the sport and then it coming right back up was fantastic.
It was about attracting people that wouldn't normally watch us on Sunday to the NFL, and it was about bringing that lifestyle, the entertainment to life. And one of the things I remember from Piccadilly, when we actually were on, we did a kickoff event on Piccadilly, is a friend of mine came with her children, and she walked up from the tube and said, wow, I've come to America. And it was just about creating that Americana, and that's what we wanted to achieve.
To be able to bring that type of atmosphere to Wembley, to London, I think it's the closest thing to an American game that you're going to get. You have people from all over the world, all over Europe, coming to Wembley to share this American experience. And I think year after year, the game has just got bigger, more popular. But for me, it's all about the show, the fireworks. You have sometimes people performing at half-time. It's just the whole package. And I think if you've never been to a football game, definitely get to one in London.
Trafalgar Square, yeah, it was a crazy thought to think that you can parade the Atlanta Falcons through, 5,000 people and bring them up on stage, but we did it. It definitely showed the players, the owners, that it means something, and the reason they're there was to grow the sport, and that's what we were trying to do, is promote the league.
You just get to rub shoulders with the people that I grew up watching. I'm chatting to Joe Montana, I'm talking to Dan Marino, and I think that's the beautiful thing about NFL UK Live and the London Games, is that we get to engage with the fans.
But now I'm in such an amazing position to still be a fan, but to be able to broadcast, to be able to present to obviously the big screens and people while they're sitting there in the crowd where I used to sit. That is almost dream come true stuff.
Interest in the NFL is expanding as we grow internationally. In fact, today we are announcing that our 2 games in London next season The 49ers and Jaguars and the Steelers Vikings already are sold out. It is a sign that the game is growing globally.
So a key moment in 2012 was when Shad Khan volunteered that his Jaguars team would, from 2013 onwards, volunteer to play a home game.
We had already played, I guess, 3 games by then. It was just a matter of trying to grow the business off of what was already a pretty strong and developing fan base.
I think it's great that the Jacksonville Jaguars have committed to coming to London and have devoted a big chunk of their regular season home games to London, to coming here and spending time here, and they've embedded themselves. And they want every NFL fan in the UK to embrace the Jacksonville Jaguars and not necessarily become their number 1 team, but definitely their number 2 team. Because I think if they've shown as much commitment as they have to us, the fans, we should repay them and say, yep, I'm going to buy a t-shirt at least.
The UK has really served as a highlight both on and off the field for us. We have seen really the lows and highs that the entire organization has faced over the course of Shad's ownership. I remember the Baltimore game here, which really felt like a launch pad to what eventually turned out to be an incredibly successful season, having been 6 short minutes away from the Super Bowl. Then obviously we've had some teething issues as an organization on the field too, so we've seen that here as well. But the gratifying part being over here has been really the fans. You know, we've seen really strong embrace of the Jaguars, a strong embrace of what we're doing here, strong embrace of our 365-day activation in this market. Our fans in London and in Jacksonville have been incredibly resilient, and we're extremely grateful to them for their support because it's been really immeasurable in a lot of ways.
We got a chance today to show them who we are in front of the world. You know where we are right now? In front of the world. Let's go.
In 2013, we played 2 games. Fans came out in their droves, and then we found ourselves being challenged with, well, why don't you play 3 games the following year? And so we went from 1 game a year to 2 games a year to 3 games a year in consecutive years. Then as we were playing 3 games, we started to find that it was challenging getting the UK sporting calendar and stadium availability to match with when the US wanted to have their season schedule in place, which meant that we started to have to look at alternative options to play to give us enough flexibility. So we started to look at playing games in stadia around the UK. Back then there were only 3 stadia where the measurements allowed us to play the games. Twickenham was one of those places, and so we started to play games at Wembley and Twickenham, and proud to say that we became the first non-rugby sporting event to be played at Twickenham, which was great.
Twickenham was interesting for me because I'm a big rugby union fan now. I do a lot of work with the England rugby team, and seeing it transform into an NFL stadium as opposed to a rugby stadium was hilarious, because I was speaking to one friend from the RFU and they said that the NFL spent as much money on banners outside the stadium as the RFU spend in 4 years dressing Twickenham.
When we went to Twickenham, our biggest challenge was trying to manipulate the facilities to actually be able to accommodate 65 lockers for the players on 2 sides. So their locker rooms are 25 kind of lockers only. So that's in essence for us our coaches. That's just the coaching group alone. We built a locker room in the England team gym. So we basically removed all the equipment and we built a 75 locker room in a weights room. And on the other side we knocked through a wall and created a locker room in the lounge by connecting it to the main locker room that they normally use for rugby. So, we're 140 people per team that are coming in. It's a big infrastructure and it's a big challenge for the stadiums to be able to accommodate it.
We've come so far just to say that we can handle 4 games in the UK and that we have stadium availability in Tottenham and that we built a locker room and we have an NFL field that exists is huge.
Chilling with the Brits. Shout out to the Queen.
London, baby!
London could someday be a host for an NFL franchise.
I walked into the stadium, it's like I'd never been there before. That's how impressive it was. So they've done a really good job.